The alarms screamed through the bridge of the Endeavor, pulling Captain Ryan Morgan from his morning coffee. Red lights flashed across every screen as his crew scrambled to their stations. Something massive had just appeared near Jupiter, and it was falling apart. "Talk to me, Stevens," Ryan said, gripping the armrest of his chair. His sensor officer's fingers flew across the console. "Captain, we have a vessel. Unknown design. It's huge, maybe 5 times our size, hull breaches on multiple decks. I'm reading life signs, but the systems are failing." Ryan stood and walked toward the main view screen. The ship that appeared before them looked ancient, its metal skin scarred and blackened. Pieces of debris drifted away from its hull like leaves falling from a dying tree. "Are they sending any signals?" "Yes, sir. Distress call on all frequencies. They're asking for help." The communication officer turned in her seat. "Captain, I'm also picking up a priority message from Earth Command. They're ordering all human vessels to stay away from that ship. No contact, no rescue attempts." Ryan's jaw tightened. "That makes no sense. They're dying out there." "Sir, there's more," the communication officer continued. "The Galactic Council has issued a statement. That ship carries the Kalesh. They say the Kalesh are forbidden to receive aid from any Council species." The name Kalesh meant nothing to Ryan, but he had served in space long enough to know that the Council rarely acted without reason. The Galactic Council governed hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. Humanity had joined only 30 years ago, and they were still considered newcomers. Young, reckless, dangerous. "Why are they forbidden?" Ryan asked. His first officer pulled up the Council database. "It says here the Kalesh released a genetic plague that killed billions across 3 star systems. The plague still affects their population. The Council banished them from all civilized space." Ryan watched the dying ship on his screen. He could see lights flickering inside. Imagine the people trapped inside those failing systems. "How long ago did this happen?" 15 years, sir." 15 years of exile. 15 years of running. Ryan had seen enough war in his time to know that guilt and innocence were rarely simple things. But right now, people were dying, and he had the power to help them. "Bring us closer," he ordered. "Prepare the medical bay." "Captain, Earth Command was very clear." "I heard them," Ryan interrupted. "Now bring us closer." The Endeavor moved toward the massive alien vessel. As they approached, Ryan could see the extent of the damage. The ship looked like it had been traveling for years, held together by nothing but determination and prayer. His crew fell silent as they watched it drift. "Captain, incoming transmission from the alien ship," the communication officer announced. "Put it through." The view screen changed. A face appeared, unlike any human face, but clearly intelligent and desperate. Large eyes, slightly blue-tinted skin, and features that seemed both familiar and foreign. The alien was female, Ryan guessed, though he could not be certain. "Please," she said in heavily accented but understandable English. "We are dying. Our children are dying. We need help. I'm Captain Ryan Morgan of the Earth vessel Endeavor. How many are on your ship?" 50,000, she replied. "Maybe more. Our counting systems have failed. I am Ilara. I speak for my people because our leaders have all passed from the plague." 50,000. Ryan felt the weight of that number settle on his shoulders. "Ilara, I'm going to help you, but I need to know about this plague. Can it spread to humans?" "No," she said quickly. "It only affects Kalesh. It is in our blood, in our genes. We did not mean to create it. It was an accident, a medical treatment that went wrong. But the Council did not believe us. They said we made a weapon." Before Ryan could respond, another transmission cut through. This one came from a Council ship that had just appeared on their sensors. The being on the screen was tall and thin, with silver skin and cold eyes. Ryan recognized the species, Zenthari. They were one of the oldest and most powerful members of the Council. "Human vessel?" This is Ambassador Corval of the Zenthari delegation. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. The Kalesh are enemies of all civilized species. They must not be given aid. They're dying, Ryan said flatly. They killed billions, Corval replied, his voice like ice. Justice demands they face the consequences of their actions. If you interfere, humanity will be expelled from the Galactic Council. All trade agreements will end. All technology transfers will stop. Your colonies will be cut off. Ryan looked back at Alara's face on the split screen. She was trying to be brave, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Behind her, he glimpsed other Kalesh, thin and weak, some lying on the floor. Ambassador, with respect, I'm looking at refugees, not criminals. They need medical attention. They need justice, Corval snapped. You humans are too young to understand the way the galaxy works. There are rules. There are consequences. If you help them, you choose exile alongside them. The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge of the Endeavor remained silent. Ryan's crew looked at him, waiting for orders. He thought about Earth, about the millions of humans living on dozens of worlds, all dependent on council trade and technology. He thought about his career, his duty to follow orders. Then, he looked at Alara again, at the dying people behind her. Get me President Martinez, Ryan said, and prepare docking procedures. We're bringing them aboard. His first officer hesitated. All of them, sir? 50,000? As many as we can fit. Then we call for every human ship in range to help with the rest. The Council will follow through on their threats, Captain. Ryan nodded slowly. I know. But we're human. We don't leave people to die in the cold just because someone tells us to. Get Earth on the line. President Martinez needs to make a choice, and she needs to make it now. As his crew rushed to follow his orders, Ryan watched the Kalesh ship drift closer. He had just started something that could change everything for humanity. But when he looked at Alara's grateful face, at the hope that flickered in her eyes, he knew he could not have made any other choice. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to stand between humans and people who needed help. President Grace Martinez stood before the emergency session of Earth's Global Assembly, looking at the faces of representatives from every nation and colony. She had been president for 6 years, had navigated trade disputes and territorial conflicts, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Galactic Council has given us 48 hours to respond, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in the chamber. Captain Morgan has already begun transferring Kalesh refugees to the Endeavor and 3 other vessels that answered his call. As of now, we have 12,000 Kalesh in human custody. 38,000 remain on their dying ship. A representative from the Mars colony stood. Madam President, the Council controls access to the wormhole gates. Without them, our colonies cannot receive supplies. We're talking about millions of human lives at risk. I'm aware of the stakes, Grace replied. Another voice called out. The Kalesh killed billions. Why should we risk everything for them? Grace pulled up a holographic display. Dr. Ben Harper, Chief Medical Officer on the Endeavor, has completed his initial analysis of the Kalesh plague. Doctor, please share your findings. A tired-looking man appeared on the screens throughout the chamber. Ben Harper had not slept in 30 hours, and it showed. The plague is genetic, encoded in Kalesh DNA. It causes their cells to break down over time. But here's the important part. It cannot spread to other species. It's not contagious in any traditional sense. So we're not at risk, someone asked. No, Ben confirmed. And I've reviewed the historical data. The Kalesh story checks out. This began as a genetic treatment meant to cure a disease. Instead, it mutated into something worse. The initial outbreak was accidental. The spread to other systems happened because the Kalesh didn't realize what they had created until it was too late. Grace watched the room process this information. The council has known these facts for years. They chose to ignore them. They chose punishment over mercy. On the Endeavor, Ryan Morgan stood in the medical bay, watching as Kalesh refugees lay on every available surface. His ship was designed for a crew of 200. He now had 4,000 beings aboard. The air recyclers struggled to keep up. Food supplies were already running low. Ilara moved among her people, offering comfort despite her own weakness. She stopped beside a small child, perhaps 6 years old in human terms, and brushed the hair from the child's forehead. The child's breathing was labored. "How many children?" Ryan asked quietly. "Nearly 10,000 on the ship and here," Ilara replied. "They are dying fastest. The plague accelerates in the young." Ryan clenched his fists. He had called Earth, made his report, and now waited for politicians to decide if compassion was worth the cost. He hated waiting. Back on Earth, Kate Sullivan sat in her small apartment watching the news feeds. She had resigned from her position as Earth's liaison to the Galactic Council 3 hours ago. The formal letter sat on her desk, already submitted. Her former colleagues had called her foolish, emotional, naive. She did not care. When the Council had threatened military action against human vessels harboring Kalesh refugees, she could no longer represent them in good conscience. Now she watched as talking heads debated the situation, as experts calculated the economic cost of defying the Council. None of them talked about the children dying on that ship. Kate opened her computer and began writing. If the politicians would not act fast enough, maybe the people would. She created a message, simple and direct, and sent it to every news organization she could think of. 50,000 beings are dying while we debate. How much is our humanity worth? The message spread across Earth's networks within minutes. Within an hour, protests formed outside government buildings. People carried signs with Ilara's face, with images of Kalesh children. The Global Assembly's private networks crashed under the weight of millions of calls demanding action. In the Assembly chamber, Grace Martinez watched the shift in real time. Representatives who had been arguing for caution suddenly changed their positions. The voice of the people was becoming too loud to ignore. But the council was not idle. Ambassador Corval appeared on every major broadcast channel, his silver face stern and unforgiving. Humanity faces a simple choice: obey the laws of civilized space or join the criminals in exile. If you choose the Kalesh, you choose to abandon 300 years of galactic progress. You will lose access to medical technology that saves millions of human lives each year. You will lose the protection of council fleets. You will be alone. He paused, letting the words sink in. And for what? For a species that committed genocide, whether by accident or design. The Kalesh had their chance. They failed. Now they must face the consequences. This is justice. The broadcast ended, leaving a heavy silence across Earth. Grace Martinez knew the time for debate had ended. She called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as the votes appeared on the main screen. Representatives pressed their buttons, green for accepting the Kalesh, red for turning them away. Green lights filled the board. Not unanimous, but close enough. Humanity had made its choice. Grace stepped forward again. The motion passes. We will offer sanctuary to the Kalesh people. All human vessels in range are ordered to assist in the evacuation. We will establish a quarantine facility on Mars to house the refugees while we work on a cure. She paused, then continued. To Ambassador Corval and the Galactic Council, we say this: we are human. We do not turn away the desperate. We do not let children die because of ancient grudges. If you wish to expel us from your council, so be it. We would rather stand alone with our conscience than sit comfortably with our shame. The assembly erupted in applause, though some remained seated, their faces worried. Within hours, 17 human vessels changed course toward Jupiter. The largest rescue operation in human history began. Ships designed for cargo hauled refugees. Passenger liners canceled routes to make room. Even private vessels, small family ships, arrived to take aboard whoever they could fit. Ben Harper worked alongside Kalesh healers, learning their biology, studying the plague. A Kalesh scientist named Vorin became his constant companion, teaching him about Kalesh genetics while learning human medical techniques in return. "We tried everything," Vorin said quietly as they reviewed data. "For 15 years, we searched for a cure. We lost our best scientists to the plague before they could finish their work." "Then we'll finish it together," Ben replied. "Human and Kalesh, working as one. Maybe that's something the Council never tried." Kate Sullivan, no longer bound by diplomatic protocol, organized volunteers. She called the group the Open Hand, and thousands of humans signed up to help. They prepared facilities on Mars, gathered supplies, coordinated the massive logistics of relocating 50,000 refugees. On the bridge of the Endeavor, Ryan received the final count. "All Kalesh are off their ship, Captain. We got every one of them." Ryan nodded, allowing himself a moment of relief. Then the census officer spoke up, her voice tight with tension. "Captain, multiple Council vessels are entering the system. 20 ships. They're taking up blockade positions around Earth." Ambassador Corval's face appeared on the screen once more. "You have made your choice, humans. Now live with the consequences. As of this moment, Earth is expelled from the Galactic Council. All trade is suspended. All human vessels are banned from Council space. You are alone." The transmission ended. The bridge crew looked at their captain, fear evident on some faces. Ryan thought of Ilara, of the Kalesh children now safe aboard his ship and others. He thought of the choice his species had made, the price they would pay. "Alone," he said quietly, "but not without honor. Set course for Mars. Let's take our guest home." Jake Peters had lived on Mars for 12 years. He had helped build the colony from nothing, had watched it grow from a few dozen prefab structures into a city of 30,000 humans. He loved the red dust, the thin atmosphere, the challenge of making a home on a world that did not want human life. Now, his home was being transformed into a hospital and refugee center, and he was not happy about it. "They're taking over everything," he complained to his co-workers at the water reclamation plant. "The southern district is completely closed off now. Medical facilities, quarantine zones. They say we might have to ration water." His supervisor, an older woman named Chen, shook her head. "Jake, they're dying. Would you rather we let them die in space?" "I'd rather we didn't risk everything we built here," Jake shot back. "We don't even know these aliens." But despite his words, Jake found himself watching the Kalesh as they arrived. They came in waves, transported down from the orbiting ships in shuttles that landed every few hours. They looked weak, defeated. Many had to be carried on stretchers. The children's eyes were too large in their thin faces. One day, Jake saw a young Kalesh woman collapse near the water station where he worked. Without thinking, he ran to help her. She looked up at him with fear, as if expecting him to turn away. "It's okay," he said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. "Let me help you." He carried her to the medical center, where human and Kalesh doctors worked side by side. The woman's name was Sierra. She thanked him in broken English, and Jake felt something shift inside his chest. 2 years passed. The Galactic Council's embargo hit Earth hard. Colonies that depended on imported food struggled. Medical supplies ran low. Several outer colonies, unable to sustain themselves, voted to break away from Earth and rejoin the Council. It was a painful split, but no one could blame them for choosing survival. President Martinez faced protests at home. People demanded to know when things would return to normal. Some called for the Kalesh to be sent away, but Grace remained firm. We made a choice as a species. We don't abandon people because helping them is hard. On Mars, Ben Harper's medical complex had grown into the largest research facility in human space. He barely slept anymore, driven by the puzzle of the Kalesh plague. Voren worked beside him, the two of them forming a partnership that bridged their species. "Look at this," Voren said one night, pointing to a screen filled with genetic sequences. "The plague attacks here, at this specific protein chain. If we could stabilize this region..." Ben leaned in, his tired eyes suddenly alert. "We could stop the progression, not cure it, but stop it from getting worse." They worked for 6 more months, testing and refining. They failed 100 times, but slowly, carefully, they began to succeed. The treatment they developed could not repair the damage already done, but it could stop the plague from advancing. Kalesh, who received the treatment, stopped getting sicker. When they announced their success, celebrations erupted on Mars. Humans and Kalesh embraced in the streets. Jake Peters found himself crying, surprised by how much he had come to care about these strangers who had become his neighbors. But not everyone celebrated. Ambassador Corval sent a message to Earth, broadcast across all human networks. His silver face showed only contempt. "So you have delayed their deaths. You have not saved them. The Kalesh can live but cannot reproduce. In 2 generations, they will be extinct anyway. You have achieved nothing but prolonging suffering." Kate Sullivan, who had built the Open Hand into a massive humanitarian network, read the message and felt rage burn in her chest. The Kalesh could live now, free from pain. But they could not have children. The plague had damaged their reproductive genes too severely. Corval was right about one thing. The Kalesh were still dying, just slowly. But Kate was not ready to give up. She contacted Sophie Chen, a brilliant human geneticist who specialized in reproductive medicine. "Is there a way?" Kate asked. "Any way at all?" Sophie studied the problem for weeks. Then she called a meeting with Kate, Ben, Voren, and Alara. Her face was serious as she presented her findings. "The Kalesh reproductive system is damaged beyond repair with their current genetics," Sophie explained. "But theoretically, we could introduce human genetic material to stabilize the damaged areas. The result would be hybrid children, part human and part Kalesh." The room fell silent. Ilara spoke first. "Our children would not be fully Kalesh." "No," Sophie admitted. "But they would carry your culture, your memories, your heritage. And they would live." "This is not a decision I can make alone," Ilara said. "I must speak with my people." The debate among the Kalesh lasted for months. Some argued that creating hybrids would mean the end of their species as it existed. Others said that survival in any form was better than extinction. Humans debated too, questioning the ethics of genetic mixing, wondering what these hybrid children would be. Finally, Ilara stood before her people and made an announcement. "I will volunteer for the first attempt. If this works, if a child can be born that carries both our peoples forward, then others can choose for themselves." The procedure was risky and experimental. Sophie worked carefully, combining Kalesh and human genetics in ways that had never been attempted. Ilara became pregnant through artificial means, the first being to carry a hybrid child. Jake Peters visited her often during the pregnancy. Somehow, over the years, they had become friends. He brought her human foods she might enjoy, told her stories about Mars before the Kalesh arrived. She taught him about Kalesh history, about the world they had lost. "Are you scared?" he asked one day. "Terrified," Ilara admitted. "What if the child is rejected by both our peoples? What if I am creating something that belongs nowhere?" "Then the child will belong everywhere," Jake replied. "Like Mars. Neither fully Earth nor fully alien, but something new." Meanwhile, tensions with the Galactic Council reached a breaking point. Ambassador Corval led a fleet of Xanthari warships to Mars, claiming that humanity was violating quarantine protocols. The ships took up positions in orbit, their weapons powered and ready. Ryan Morgan, now an admiral commanding Earth's defense fleet, moved his vessels to intercept. The two fleets faced each other in the space above Mars, neither willing to back down. "You have no authority here," Ryan transmitted to Corval. "Mars is human territory." "You harbor criminals," Corval replied. "You conduct illegal genetic experiments. The Council has authorized us to remove the Kalesh by force. You'll have to go through us first." The standoff lasted for days. Ships on both sides maintained weapon locks, fingers hovering over firing controls. On Mars, humans and Kalesh watched the sky, knowing their lives hung in the balance. Then, something unexpected happened. Ships from other species began arriving. First came vessels from the Tauran, a peaceful species known for their philosophies about life. Then the Vrex arrived, warriors who respected courage above all else. More followed, species that had watched humanity's struggle from afar. They positioned themselves beside the human fleet, facing down the Xanthari. A Tauran captain transmitted a message. "We stand with Earth. The Council has forgotten what it means to show mercy. These humans have reminded us." 12 different species, all breaking ranks with the Council, all choosing to support humanity and the Kalesh. Ambassador Corval found himself outnumbered and outmaneuvered. "This is not over," he transmitted, but his fleet withdrew. In her room on Mars, Ilara felt the first contractions begin. Sophie and Ben rushed to her side, while Jake Peters waited outside, pacing like an expectant father. The birth was difficult, but finally, a cry filled the room. The first hybrid child was born, a girl with features that blended both species beautifully. Ilara held her daughter and wept, not with sorrow but with hope. Ilara named her daughter Maya. The name came from human tradition, but Ilara gave it a Kalesh meaning: new beginning. The child was perfect, her small fingers grasping at the air, her eyes bright with awareness that showed both species in their depths. News of Maya's birth spread across human space and beyond. The Kalesh people gathered to see her, and many wept with joy. Here was proof that they had a future, but not all reactions were positive. "She's not truly Kalesh," some of the older Kalesh said quietly. "Our species ends with us." "No," Ilara replied firmly. "Our species adapts with her. We survive." In the months that followed, more Kalesh volunteered for the hybrid program. Human volunteers stepped forward too, willing to become parents to these unique children. Sophie Chen worked carefully with each case, ensuring the genetics were stable, that the children would be healthy. Within 2 years, 300 hybrid children had been born. They grew faster than pure Kalesh children, stronger than either parent species. They learned both languages naturally, absorbed both cultures with ease. Mars began to transform from a refugee camp into a genuine shared home. Jake Peters found himself falling in love with this new world. He helped design schools that taught both human and Kalesh history. He learned the Kalesh language and taught English to Kalesh adults. When the Mars government held elections, the colonists chose him as their representative, and Jake surprised everyone by proposing that Kalesh refugees be given full voting rights. "They're not refugees anymore," he said to the council. "They're citizens. This is their home too." The proposal passed. Mars became the first truly mixed human Kalesh society, and they renamed it New Haven in recognition of what it represented. But the galaxy outside their small world was changing in ways they could not ignore. The Galactic Council, once united, began to fracture. The 12 species that had supported humanity at Mars faced pressure from the older Council members. Some were threatened with trade sanctions. Others faced political isolation. Ambassador Corval pushed hardest for punishment. If we allow this rebellion to stand, the council means nothing, he argued before the council chambers. Humanity must be brought to heel, and their alien pets must be removed. But many species had grown tired of the Zenthari's harsh rule. The council had been founded on principles of cooperation and mutual defense, but over the centuries it had become something else. A hierarchy where ancient species held all the power and younger species were expected to obey without question. A Taurin ambassador stood to speak. Humanity showed compassion when we would have shown none. They risked everything for strangers. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why that makes us uncomfortable. Perhaps we are the ones who have lost our way. The argument split the council down the middle. Some species began to quietly establish diplomatic relations with Earth, trading in secret despite the embargo. Others doubled down, viewing humanity as a threat to the galactic order. On Earth, President Martinez watched these developments with careful attention. She was older now, her hair gray, but her determination had not faded. When Kate Sullivan brought her a proposal, she listened with interest. Some of the species that helped us at Mars want to form a new alliance, Kate explained. Not a replacement for the Council, but an alternative. A coalition based on mutual aid rather than hierarchy. They want Earth to be at the center of it. We're not ready to lead a galactic alliance, Grace said. We're barely holding our own colonies together. Maybe that's exactly why we should lead it, Kate replied. We understand what it means to struggle. We remember what it's like to need help. Grace considered this. Then she smiled. The Free Alliance. That's what we'll call it. A coalition of free worlds, standing together. The formation of the Free Alliance sent shockwaves through galactic politics. 13 species formally withdrew from the Galactic Council to join. More expressed interest. The balance of power that had held for 1,000 years began to shift. Ambassador Quarval viewed this as a personal betrayal. He had spent decades climbing the Zenthari political structure, had earned his position through ruthless calculation. Now he watched his influence crumble because humans had decided to play the hero. He made a decision that would change everything. Without full council approval, he mobilized the Zenthari military fleet, 50 warships, the largest force the Zenthari had assembled in centuries. He would end this human rebellion by force. We will strike at New Haven, he told his commanders. Destroy the hybrid abomination they are creating there. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Council. Word of the Zenthari fleet's movement reached Earth through intelligence channels. Ryan Morgan, commanding the Human Defense Fleet, knew they were outnumbered. Even with their Free Alliance partners, they could not match the Zenthari military power. But he would be damned if he would let them destroy what they had built. All ships to New Haven, Ryan ordered. We make our stand there. The human fleet gathered in Mars orbit. Ships from the Taurin, Vrex, and 10 other species joined them. Kate Sullivan evacuated as many civilians as possible from New Haven, but most of the Kalesh refused to leave. This was their home. They would not run again. Ilara stood on the surface of Mars, little Maya in her arms, and watched the ships gather overhead. Jake stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. If they come, we'll fight, Jake said. Every human on this planet will fight to protect you. I know, Ilara replied quietly. That's what frightens me. You should not have to die for us. We're not dying for you, Jake corrected. We're fighting for what's right. There's a difference. Ben Harper and Voren worked frantically in their lab, not on weapons, but on a different approach. If we can broadcast our research findings across the galaxy, Ben said, show them what we've achieved, maybe we can change minds. They compiled everything. The cure for the plague, the successful hybrid births, the thriving community on New Haven. They sent it to every species they could reach, a message that said, this is what cooperation looks like. This is what compassion creates. The Zenthari fleet arrived at Mars with weapons hot and ready. Ambassador Corval himself commanded from the flagship. He looked at the defensive fleet and sneered. "Stand aside," he transmitted. "This is your last chance to avoid destruction." Ryan Morgan's response was simple. No. The two fleets faced each other in the cold space above Mars, weapons powered up, targeting systems locked. The moment stretched, tense and terrible. Then new ships began to arrive, not dozens, but hundreds. Species from across the galaxy, many of whom had never involved themselves in galactic politics before. They positioned themselves around Mars, creating a wall of ships between the Zenthari and the planet. A message came through from one of the new arrivals, a species called the Pelori. "We received your transmission. We saw what you've built here. The Zenthari will not touch this place, not while we live." More messages followed, each species adding their voice. The Zenthari suddenly found themselves facing not a small rebel fleet, but a significant portion of the galaxy's military power. Ambassador Corval stared at the display in disbelief. They're defying the Council for Humans? For the Kalesh? His second-in-command spoke quietly. "Sir, I think the Council may have already lost. We're not fighting a few rebels anymore. We're fighting an idea." On the surface of New Haven, cheers erupted as the Zenthari fleet began to withdraw. Ilara held Maya close and cried, while Jake wrapped his arms around both of them. The Free Alliance had won its first major victory. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same. 10 years passed. Maya grew from a baby into a bright, curious child who ran through the streets of New Haven with hundreds of other hybrid children. They were the first generation to know no other life than one of two species living as one. They spoke both languages, celebrated both cultures, and created new traditions that belonged to neither parent species alone. The Free Alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. 47 species now belonged, their ships bearing a new symbol. Two hands clasped in unity. Earth became the headquarters of this new coalition, not because humanity demanded it, but because other species insisted. The humans who had risked everything for strangers had earned the right to lead. The original Galactic Council still existed, but was diminished. 20 species remained loyal to it, mostly the older and more traditional ones. But even they were changing. The younger members of those species looked to the Free Alliance with admiration, questioning why their leaders clung to outdated ideas about hierarchy and punishment. Ambassador Corval had become a symbol of the Council's failure. His unauthorized attack on Mars had backfired spectacularly. The Zenthari government stripped him of his position, desperate to distance themselves from his actions. His own species viewed him with shame, the one who had driven allies away through arrogance and cruelty. President Martinez, elderly now but still sharp, stood before the inaugural ceremony of the Free Alliance's official charter. Beside her stood Kate Sullivan, who had been elected the first Secretary General. Also present were Ryan Morgan, now a white-haired admiral, and Ben Harper, whose work had saved the Kalesh and earned him scientific honors from a dozen species. But the main speaker was Maya. At 16, she was chosen to represent her generation, the living proof of what cooperation could create. She walked to the podium with Ilara beside her, the mother who had been brave enough to take the first step. Maya looked out at the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. Some were humanoid, others were wildly different in form. But all had come together because they believed in something better than the old ways. "My mother's people were called criminals," Maya began, her voice clear and strong. "They were banished, left to die in the cold of space. My other people, the humans, were called fools for helping them. But look what foolishness and crime created together." She gestured to the crowd. "We are the children of mercy. Every hybrid child born on New Haven exists because someone chose compassion over convenience. We live because someone decided that rules matter less than lives." Ilara watched her daughter speak and felt pride swell in her chest. This child, who should never have existed, was addressing the galaxy's leaders. Jake stood beside Ilara, his hand in hers. Over the years, they had formed a partnership that went beyond friendship. He had helped raise Maya, had become a father to her in all but genetics. The old council says we are abominations, Maya continued. They say our existence proves that species should not mix, should not help each other. But I look at my friends, at the hundreds of children like me, and I see something beautiful. I see the future. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Free Alliance was not created to destroy the Council. It was created to show a different path, a path where the strong help the weak, where the old teach the young, where no one is left to die because of ancient grudges. Admiral Ryan Morgan listened and remembered that day 10 years ago when he had first seen the Kalesh ship dying near Jupiter. He had made a choice that cost humanity so much. But looking around this chamber, at all these species standing together, he knew it had been worth every sacrifice. We invite any species to join us, Maya concluded. Not as subjects, but as equals. Not as conquerors, but as partners. The Free Alliance stands for one simple idea, that compassion is not weakness and mercy is not surrender. We are stronger together than we ever could be alone. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from dozens of species stood, showing their support. Even some observers from the old council clapped, though more quietly, conscious of being watched. After the ceremony, as the celebrations began, an unexpected visitor arrived at Earth. The security forces were alerted immediately. A small ship, bearing Zenthari markings but no weapons, requested permission to land. President Martinez, Kate Sullivan, and Admiral Morgan went to meet the visitor. When the ship's door opened, they saw a figure they recognized, though greatly changed. Ambassador Quarval stepped out, his silver skin dull, his proud bearing diminished. I request asylum, he said simply. The three humans exchanged glances. This was the being who had threatened their world, who had tried to destroy New Haven, who had been the face of the Council's cruelty. Kate spoke first. Why would we grant you asylum? Because I have nowhere else to go, Quarval replied. My government has labeled me a traitor. The Council wants to try me for my unauthorized attack on Mars. I am banished just as the Kalesh were banished. I thought I would never understand how they felt. Now I do. Grace Martinez studied the Zenthari carefully. You called them criminals. You wanted them dead. I was wrong, Quarval said, and the admission seemed to cost him greatly. I spent a decade watching the Free Alliance grow, watching what you built with the Kalesh. I told myself it would fail, that your compassion would be your weakness. But you thrived while the Council withered. I finally understood that I was not defending civilization. I was defending my own fear of change. Admiral Morgan crossed his arms. Pretty words. But you tried to kill thousands of people. Why should we believe you've changed? Because I am here, Quarval replied. I could have hidden on some forgotten world. Instead, I came to the place where I committed my greatest crimes, to face the people I wronged. If you wish to punish me, I will accept it, but I ask for mercy, the mercy I once denied others. The decision went to a vote among the Free Alliance leadership. The debate was fierce. Many wanted to send Quarval away or hand him over to the Council for trial. Others argued that the Free Alliance stood for redemption, and turning away someone seeking mercy would betray their principles. Finally, Ilara was asked to speak. She came before the Council with Maya beside her. All eyes turned to her, the Kalesh, who had suffered most directly from Quarval's hatred. When we first came to human space, we were dying, Ilara said. We expected nothing. We had committed terrible crimes, even if unintentionally. We deserved our exile. or so the galaxy told us. But humans did not ask what we deserved. They asked what we needed. She looked directly at Corval. You tried to kill my people. You tried to kill my daughter. Every part of me wants to see you suffer as we suffered. The room held its breath. But that is not what New Haven stands for, Ilara continued. We built this place on the idea that everyone deserves a second chance. Even you, Ambassador. Especially you, because if we can show mercy to our greatest enemy, then we prove that our principles are real, not just words we say when it's easy. She turned to the council. I vote to grant him asylum. Let him see what he tried to destroy. Let him live among the people he called abominations. Let him learn what we already know. That compassion is the strongest force in the universe. The vote was close, but it passed. Corval was granted asylum on New Haven under supervision. He would work in the reconstruction efforts, helping to build the very society he had tried to annihilate. Years passed. The Free Alliance continued to grow. New species joined regularly. The old Galactic Council, faced with dwindling membership, began to reform itself, adopting many of the Free Alliance's principles. The two organizations, once enemies, began to work together on common problems: exploration, trade, scientific advancement. Ryan Morgan led the first Free Alliance exploration fleet beyond the known galaxy, searching for other species that might have been forgotten or banished. Kate Sullivan worked tirelessly to maintain the delicate diplomatic balance between dozens of different cultures. Ben Harper and Voren opened an academy where students from any species could study medicine, teaching the next generation to see past boundaries. Jake Peters became the governor of New Haven, presiding over a thriving world where the red dust was now touched by the green of carefully managed gardens, where human architecture blended with Kalesh design. The population had grown to over 2 million, split almost evenly between humans, Kalesh, and hybrid children. Ilara, grown old now, sat in her garden and watched the ships come and go overhead. Maya visited often, bringing her own children, the next generation. They were fewer than fully human or Kalesh children, the hybrid genetics proving difficult, but they were loved fiercely. And Corval, the once proud ambassador, had become something unexpected. He had spent years working alongside those he once despised. He learned their language, their customs. He helped rebuild what his attack had damaged. Slowly, painfully, he changed. One day he came to Ilara's garden and asked if he could sit with her. She agreed, though she still felt discomfort in his presence. I owe you an apology, Corval said. A real one. Not the political kind. I was wrong about everything. Your people, humans, the nature of strength and weakness. I dedicated my life to order and control, and I called it civilization. But you showed me that civilization is not about who follows the rules. It's about who we protect when the rules say to look away. Ilara nodded slowly. My people have a saying, the tree that bends in the storm survives while the rigid tree breaks. You were rigid, Ambassador, but you bent before you broke. That takes its own kind of strength. They sat in silence, watching the children play in the garden. Human, Kalesh, and hybrid children ran together, laughing in a mix of languages, creating games that needed no translation. I will never undo what I tried to do, Corval said. But perhaps I can help build something better with the time I have left. Perhaps, Ilara agreed. That is all any of us can do. Build something better, one choice at a time. The sun set over New Haven, painting the sky in colors neither species had known on their original worlds. It was a new sky for a new people in a galaxy that had finally learned that the strong become strongest when they help others stand.